I'm John Berwald. I've been dealing in Chinese porcelain for the past 30 years or so, and our main speciality is 17th and 18th century porcelains and Han de Tang pottery.
And I can see you've got a piece next to you on your right.
This actually is an area which we very much specialise in, and is my favourite area. I have here at home a very sturdily potted Chinese porcelain brush pot. And this was made in the 1640s during the transitional period. And this period encompassed the decline and the eventual fall of the Ming dynasty to the invading Manchurians who were to establish the new Qing dynasty. Now, during the decline of the Ming dynasty, the kilns lost their main client, which was the Ming imperial court, whose orders for porcelain ran into the tens, if not hundreds of thousands. And at this time, the kilns then became privately owned. And the first task of the new kiln owners was to find a new client base. They had to fill the order books up. And although they had some exports that went to Japan for the tea ceremony and to the West, it was to the home market that they turned for their new client base. Now, at this time in China, literacy and education was at an all-time high, and so was the printing of woodblock books. And these books, woodblock printed books, were of Taoist tales, Chinese historical novels, and so on. And the illustrations in these books served as the inspiration for the designs we see on the porcelain at the time. And this is a perfect example, because here we have the famous story of Journey to the West, one of the most famous Ming novels. And there's the monk Tripitaki with some of the animals we've always heard of, piggy and monkey. So as you can see from this design, this is a very home market object. Now, interestingly, the artist who painted this had previously been painting the Ming imperial porcelain, which became rather repetitive in manufacture. And this must have been very exciting to them. All of a sudden, they can really use their artistic skills. And they devised, in the 1640s, the techniques I'm going to point out to you, which help us date it to that decade. What they did was they used these, what we refer to as V-shaped grasses. I don't know, can you see them there? They served to give the figures in the scene a footing, so they didn't look like they were floating around. This monumental shaded rockwork was to give depth to the scene. And then, interestingly, as you can imagine, if it's taken from a woodblock print, a print has a left and a right-hand side. And to preserve that, they gave the pots a back with these cloud banks. So it's almost as if you can visualize the print wrapped around this porcelain canvas. Now, of course, the brush pot, which had been previously a wooden object, was a perfect shape for this sort of design. And if we look on screen now, we can see another shape which was actually invented at this time to serve this purpose. You're looking at what was known in China as an elephant foot vase. If you look at this vase, we can see on there another very Chinese taste subject, and it is the famous Zhonghui. And Zhonghui is the queller of demons and ghosts. And there's a little picture there of a demon who is tamed, who is pulling along his rather reluctant deer. Interestingly, after the 1640s and when the kilns eventually came back under Qing imperial control, these shapes disappear and they were only used at this time. Now, I'd just like to explain a little bit more about the client base, because this consisted of two very different groups. One were the rich merchants, and they were making a huge amount of money in the Jiangnan region, which had very fertile land. They were big landowners. And they also had the monopoly on the salt trade. So this was a hugely wealthy group. And this group thronged the urban centres like Suzhou and Shanghai, where they rubbed shoulder to shoulder with the other group, which were the Chinese literati, the scholar elite, the people who, if you like, were the civil servants of the empire for over a millennium. And it's fair to say that the scholar elite resented the rich, wealthy merchants coming into the market. They were the nouveau riche of the day, and they were upsetting the balance. And this is where you get a little bit of a mirroring in what's happening today. The supply in the market had no chance of meeting the demand. And as we know, when that happens, fates enter the market. And what I'd like to do, I'd like to finish up just by reading something to you. I'll just grab a bit of paper here, by Sao Chang-hu, who wrote this at the time that the brush pot was made. And he is in Suzhou, which was one of the main marketplaces for antiques. In old Suzhou, at Changmen, the city gate, many shops stand in rows like fish scales. Amongst the most numerous are antique shops. People in high places are so proud of their connoisseurship. They will keep on buying with all the money they have. How many authentic antiques can there be? No wonder the market is filled with forgeries.